Do you see this also as part of a pattern? We, of course, have fault lines along lines of religion, which have been exacerbated politically. Then comes the caste census, and now this comment. Do you see there any linkages in this?
100% I do, because it seems to me as if the opposition is resorting to dangerous, deadly scorched earth policy, whose implications and consequences are bound to go beyond 2024. I don't think this game is being played purely for the sake of succeeding at elections in 2024. I see this as laying the foundation for following a potentially balkanizing strategy as far as Bharat is concerned, well beyond 2024. And these are the foundations which are being laid for 2029 and thereafter. So I am of the clear view that an anti-Bharat clique or cabal has chosen to occupy the policy circles and the advisory circles of those in opposition, because of which we get to hear all sorts of, let's say, separatist statements being issued in the name of a vision for Bharat. All these days, this separatist dialogue and the separatist tone and tenor was emanating from certain academic circles. For it to be mainstreamed and for it to become part of somebody's election manifesto and politicking at the time of elections is deeply troublesome. And I say this, perhaps we will see the consequences of this post the 2024 elections, regardless of who comes to power. And I would be concerned about somebody coming to power if they hold these kind of views.
Interesting. So this entire tactic you're saying is to only highlight the differences that we have in society, and this is happening in consonance. Do you think that if another term of Modi government is made possible, this is going to get even sharper, this effort to try and create divides in the country or to highlight the divides in our country?
So, Padmanaji, so the thing is, I don't believe in being a naysayer, but my reading of the situation is this. We saw activism 1.0 being activated between 2014 and 2019, which was then escalated to another different level altogether where the streets were occupied post 2019. I suspect that if the BJP comes back to power in 2024, seriously volatile times are ahead, at least for the next 2 years until 2026. Okay? And my suspicion is, or my hunch is, that if the BJP were to come back to power, and I have no idea as to who's going to come back to power, because I think until the results are out on 4th of June, it's anybody's guess. And I'm no cephalogist. But if they do come back to power, I suspect that the opposition is going to try and drag them into a war of attrition, where Bharat's very identity, its fundamental existence, will be called into question in every possible way using gender, jati, environment, and whatnot. And I'm someone who certainly believes that environment is a very important aspect that every government must pay attention to. But all sorts of labels and all sorts of social justice causes will be taken up, so that the government has very little time or patience to address actual issues or geopolitical challenges. And it is going to spend the better part of its time putting out fires within the country. Okay? So even if the BJP comes back to power, I don't see happy times ahead for the next 2 years. Economically, we may do well, but our energies, our conversations, our, the bulk of our mind space will be directed at identity politics of the worst possible sort.
But isn't identity politics a part and parcel from the days of Mandal Commission? And again, this government has also again and again gone out of its way to say that reservations are a reality. Even Baba Saheb Ambedkar is not going to be able to do away with them. So what is the difference then if you're talking about identity politics being made front and center by the opposition? The government also does the same. They're saying we are pro-reservation, nobody can take it away, we are going to uphold it. That's an integral part of our politics.
I am not going to give any political party, any mainstream political party or even a regional political party a free pass or a clean sheet on identity politics. Everybody indulges in it. Okay? That's the reality of Indian politics. And I think that's the global reality at this point. I'm more concerned about what the end goal of the identity politics is. If someone says that there is a civilizational identity that Bharat has always enjoyed, and the assertion, calm, confident assertion of that identity is not at loggerheads with the promise of equality to everybody else, that is one form of identity politics. The other form of identity politics is to basically say, we are fundamentally an oppressive civilization, and all that we have done is to oppress people for 5,000 years. In addition to the fact that we have never guaranteed free rights or equal rights of freedom to religious minorities, and therefore, this country must go down a path of cultural balkanization where the civilizational identity, namely the Hindu identity of this country, must suffer multiple attacks on its body in the name of reservation or further entrenchment of reservation. Then I think these are two different brands of identity politics. Because you've touched upon Dr. Ambedkar's position on reservation. I say this as someone who's been an equal critique of both parties on this front. That reservations of groups which have suffered certain forms of behavior, I would say must remain in the statute book for a while. But if Dr. Ambedkar is going to be the touchstone for everything, he's also taken a position on the Islamist problem, and he's also taken a position with respect to the longevity of reservations and who all can actually claim to be the beneficiaries of the reservations. So if people want to talk about reservations, we have to ask ourselves this honest question. Do we see a point where we can actually have a calm conversation, an honest conversation, and who can be extended this particular benefit? When is the cutoff date? What about the creamy layer issue? That would be the way to go forward. But if someone says, I'm going to entrench the politics of victimhood to such an extent that every community within the Hindu fold is going to indulge in a race to the bottom, in a mad grab for reservation, I don't think that person clearly has Bharat's best interests in his heart at all. In that sense, I would seriously suspect that somebody else is holding the strings and perhaps the local actors are mere puppets.
We are speaking at a time when you have a report from the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, talking about how the population of Hindus since 1950 has gone down, as opposed to the population of Muslims in our country going up. Right. How do you view this? Is this, just a sign of healthy coexistence or more?
My views on this could be slightly unpalatable, so pardon me for speaking my mind on the subject. A lot of people are certainly concerned about the radical inversion of the demographic balance in border districts, both in the northeast, east, and the west. Okay, Rajasthan is seeing a heavy demographic inversion. Bihar, several districts, at least 3 districts, have seen massive demographic inversion, perhaps irreversibly so. Bengal has already suffered this for decades. Assam has suffered this for decades. At least 10 districts are out. And it's one thing for the population to explode because of higher fertility rate within the country. But if there is a massive influx of illegal migrants with support of internal players, whoever they may be, then I will certainly be concerned about it. Now, there are 2 ways of looking at this. One is an explosion or demographic inversion as a consequence of illegal migration and systematic illegal migration, racketed illegal migration. And the second is where fertility rates are different. Now, unless the government has a policy on addressing population control or fertility rates in general, the second category, frankly speaking, cannot be interfered with. But the first category is the seriously problematic category. And as someone who is a concerned citizen, I am equally critical and heavily critical of the BJP for not having spoken or done enough in a systematic fashion on the front of illegal migration. We are looking at a figure of nothing less than 5 to 5.5 crores. Okay. And that population is regularly weaponized when it comes to street warfare or urban warfare. And it becomes a convenient tool for people to say, well, it's only the Bangladeshis and Rohingyas who are responsible for this. Well, in which case, what has the state done to keep them in check, to ensure that you stem their influx in this country? And why has, let's say, the establishment not taken a much more strong or serious position on this front legally before the Supreme Court and before international fora? Because otherwise what's going to happen is human rights is going to be used as a stick to beat the Indian state with to constantly encourage illegal migration. Okay. And we will be told that living in such a volatile neighborhood, even Bharat has to observe an open border policy, which I don't think really bodes well for this country, given the neighborhood we live in and let's say the track record of some of our neighbors and their predecessors. So I'm of the view that if the Prime Minister's office or the BJP's establishment is serious about taking this discussion to its logical end, then I would want this conversation to continue beyond the elections as opposed to being a topic merely for the season of elections. I see this as a good sign that the government is talking about it.
Ah,
But what does it propose to do about it is a question.